morning. So this is Kaylee. She has a little brother named Rico. Every time I saw her, she always had a big, beautiful smile on her face, but okay, yes. She was shy, but once you got to know her, she had the best personality. Every time I did the slideshow, she would come over with me and sit down with me. She loved to play games and do art. She always wanted to do everything. And like most of the kids there, she loved piggyback rides. She and I had a real connection the first time we talked. When I first met her, she was sitting in the corner not talking to anyone or showing her face to the camera. But once I sat down with her and I started talking to her and I made her laugh, we really had a great time.
So this is Tristan, and he's my new best friend because I was with him all the time. I met him the second day of camp, and we kind of connected right there. He insisted on wearing my hat every day, and I let him because he was always on my back, me giving him a piggyback ride. The best part about Tristan was he didn't want to come inside for closing songs one day, and I was like, come on, you should come inside, it's really fun. But he insisted on playing basketball outside. But then after 5 minutes of playing basketball, he came inside with a bright, clean smile, saying that he wanted to sing the songs, and he had the most energy and biggest smile out of all the kids there, and we just sang the songs while he was on my back.
This is Mary. She is the church lady. She lives right next door to the church, and she is the person that unlocked the door for us every morning at 11 and locked it back up at about 5 o'clock when we were done cleaning up and ready to go. She loves this Sawmill church. She is 72 years old. She has 8 children. She had a husband who was unkind to her, but he died at 40, and she's okay now. So Mary is really a blessed soul for that entire community.
This is Wanesha, or as we mostly called her, Wincy. From the day of the community barbecue, she was very friendly and more than happy to tell me about her life. On that first day, I think we really got to be pretty close because I kind of hung out with her the whole time. She was closer to my age than a lot of the other kids. She was 12. So we were able to maintain interesting conversation throughout the week. She was also one of the few kids who readily dived into whatever we were doing, whether it was hula hooping or singing songs. She often tried to get one of her other friends into it too. And I even saw her in the art room happily participating there. At the end of the week, she made me and Jordan a card, and in the inside was a drawing of Potato Girl from Attack on Titan. I don't know if you guys watch Attack on Titan, but she does. And I was so glad that I had the chance to get her to know her over the past week, and I really hope I'll get to see her next time I go to Sawmill.
Well, it's my 3rd year having been at Sawmill, and every year there's kind of a breath of fresh air and youth, and something changes. And the bonds that we as a group and I have formed have seemed to mature. And it's always interesting to see how they grow and how the kids grow themselves. But the one thing that never seems to change with all the kids that we see and meet is the second you bend over to pick up a piece of trash, or you don't have someone on your back, they jump on your back. And so that's how I feel. It's very interesting to see how they mature and how they don't mature.
This is Dakota, my favorite little buddy. He's 10 years old and he has special needs. I remember him well from last year, though last summer I didn't have the chance to really connect with him that I did this year. Last Sunday, I was very pleasantly surprised that he remembered my name and gave me a big hug when he first arrived at the church. Dakota spent most of his time at camp outside in rec playing tag with whoever was willing, it was me, and getting piggyback rides. When he tired of running around, Dakota would go to his house and just across the street and come back with a pile of books for me to read to him, which quickly became my favorite part of every day. I'm very grateful for the chance I had to see Dakota grow and change.
This is Rico, who is one of the smallest and youngest of the children who came to see us every day at camp. And although he was pretty young, he knew exactly what he wanted every day, a ball and a piggyback ride, usually both at the same time, which was not easy to pull off, right, Jason? I reserved all my piggyback rides for Rico, and it had everything to do with the fact that he was the smallest and lightest. Rico lived with his sister Kaylee, his mother, and various other relatives fairly close to the church, and he was always one of the first ones to get there as soon as we arrived. We usually arrived around 11. Camp didn't start till 1. For Rico, camp started at 11. Piggyback rides immediately. I think that Rico was just such a pleasure to watch every day, whether he was playing basketball with Barbara, whose arm length was actually longer than he is tall, or again, watching him bounce around on piggyback rides. Some of the easiest things that we had to give to these kids made him incredibly happy. So it was a real joy.
Hello. I chose a picture of me, Tristan, and Devin because this is on the first day, right after we had played about 2 hours of volleyball with him and a couple other kids. This was the barbecue. This was before anything else had really happened, and it was the first really good memory I had with the Navajos, and Tristan was one of the most excited and happy kids there. He just really enjoyed playing volleyball and just being around other kids and having fun, and I just thought that was my favorite memory from the trip this year. So, thank you.
The kid you see there with the baseball cap is Andrew. Andrew was my guide and co-pilot when driving to pick up kids to participate in the camp. He's going into 5th grade. His favorite subject at school is math. His last read from the Sawmill library is Diary of a Wimpy Kid. At one of the days taking kids home, he said, he thought it would be great if we would all move to Sawmill with our families.
So this is my friend Alexis. She always came to camp with a really big smile on her face, and she was always very enthusiastic during the songs that we sang in camp. She really liked the one with the little red wagon. She was always very helpful, and it was really nice.
So Lena couldn't be here today, but she asked me to read a little what she wrote. So this is a picture I chose. The picture I chose is of Thomerson, someone who I've seen each year. On day 3, Thomerson came up to me, gave me a big hug, and said, "You're a great friend." On day 4, when everyone was signing each other's shirts, he wrote his name on mine, then proceeded to write "Kick Me" right next to it. After I had faced several kicks to the shin, Thomerson decided to write "I love you" right next to where he had written "Kick Me." On day 4, when everyone was signing, after I had faced several kicks, you know what? "I love you" is the end, sorry.
Okay, so real quickly, I have been on this trip every single year, so I feel like I've kind of outspoken myself, but I'll talk about this child anyway. This is Orion. He is going to the 5th grade. He is 10 years old. His best friend Ethan couldn't come this year for reasons I chose not to ask about. I knew him last year, and he remembered me this year too. He is one of the sweetest children I have ever met. He was also one of the many, many, many amazing people who I, in art, got the chance to photograph for a self-portrait type of project. We printed all their pictures, and they made self-portrait type peace in me things, basically. I loved seeing all of their faces, all of their smiles, because it made every single bit of work that we did and all the prep and all the travel and all the stress and all the tired. It made all of that worth it just to get nice smiles and silly faces and happy thoughts from everybody.
So this is a picture of Emerlyn on your left and Seven holding up the peace sign. I've been on this trip 3 out of the 4 years, and the first year I went was in 2012. Emerlyn was the very first person I met. We were having a barbecue, and she was 11 years old, and she was a little shy, and she was a little withdrawn, and she wasn't sure if it was cool enough to come to camp. But she did. And this year, when I went knocking on doors to say, hey, we're having peace camp, I knocked on Seven's door, and she said, I said, can you come? And she goes, yeah, it's just me. And I said, what's your name? And she goes, Seven. And I'm like, I remember you. But she was 7 when I met her, and 11 this year, so she had changed a bit. What amazed me about these 2 girls is every day I went to go pick them up, every day they had another little child get into the car with them. And they graciously helped the little ones. And then we went from, 3 to 2 to infant. And in the Navajo world, when your sister has a child, you're not an aunt or an uncle, you're a mother or a father. And I think that these 2 girls, for me, embraced this idea of it takes a village to raise a child.
This is me and Bernard. Bernard's an 8-year-old artist who's energetic and optimistic and affectionate, and he's like all the other kids at Sawmill. He always wanted another piggyback ride. The very first day that we got to camp, when we had the barbecue, he greeted me with a huge hug, and he just started a conversation with me, and I'd never talked to him before. Over the course of the week, we continued to talk and get closer. And on the 3rd day, at the very end, when I asked him which session was his favorite that day, he told me it was rec, because it meant he got to spend time with me, even though he hated sports. Bernard always said stuff like this, stuff that was really sweet and deep in ways that were really surprising and abnormal for just an 8-year-old. The sweetest of all the things that he told me on the 4th day, just before we left. I like sitting in your lap. It means I get to feel safer than I ever get to. You make me feel safe, and not very many people do that.
This is a picture of a very cute 3-year-old named Zoe. On the first day of camp during the opening, I saw she was sitting by herself and asked if she wanted to sit on my lap. From that day on, we were inseparable. She was my buddy. Zoe was sweet and funny, and she liked to tell everyone she was 2. But later I learned from her sister that she was actually 3. On the 3rd day, as well as the last day, she repeatedly told me she loved me, and she would give me a kiss, and it melted my heart, and it made my week. I love you too, Zoe.
Okay, so this kid's name is Joshua. So I thought he was a nice kid, and also what I noticed was that he always wanted cheese, and he was always thirsty, and it seemed like he came into the kitchen about 500 times.
Those things went super fast. We also brought with us many dental